Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Jane Indorf, and I'm the manager of undergraduate and graduate programs with the Leadership Alliance. Welcome to our Week 6 Virtual Professional Development Workshop on writing your statement of purpose or personal statement, CV, and resume. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, we'll be learning about best practices for writing these very important components of your grad school application. As you will hear about from our panelists, the statement of purpose is your opportunity to tell selection committees who you are and why you are a good fit for their program. Our panelists also will cover CVs and resumes and provide us with some tips for crafting these important documents. We received a lot of great questions ahead of time for this workshop, so this must be a topic that many of you are thinking a lot about. Feel free to use the Q&A box to submit any questions that come to mind during the workshop. Our moderator for today is Dr. William Wittels, Assistant Dean for Academic Affairs at Brown University's Graduate School. Dr. Wittels collaborates with and builds capacity in Brown's PhD programs to maintain and raise the standard of excellence in research, teaching, and mentoring for which graduate education at Brown is known. He has a PhD in political science from Duke University and previously worked with the Leadership Alliance as manager of programs. Dr. Wittels continues to work closely with the Alliance today, in particular with the development of this virtual professional development series. Thank you very much, Dr. Wittels, and now over to you to begin today's session.
Well, we can't hear you.
Thank you, Dr. Indorf. It's my sincere pleasure to be here with you all digitally to talk about this topic, which is near and dear to my heart, and I know is near and dear to the heart of my fellow panelists. Today, I am joined by Dr. Jasmine Crenshaw, who is the Director of Diversity Programs with the Office of Graduate and Postdoctoral Affairs at the University of Virginia. In that capacity, she collaborates with students, faculty, and administrators to establish programs and services aimed to cultivate a supportive academic environment for all to thrive. Dr. Crenshaw holds a PhD in material science from the University of Florida and a Bachelor's of Science in Physics from North Carolina A&T. I'm also joined by Dr. Naoko Tanese, who is currently I gotta say, one of the coolest titles I've seen. Dr. Tanese joined the Curci Foundation or Curci Foundation in 2023 as its Chief Science Officer. So I'm a big Star Trek nerd, and I'm very jealous of that title. Dr. Tanese had also worked for a long time at NYU with the Vilsack Institute of Graduate Biomedical Sciences. As the director of the graduate program of more than 300 students, she oversaw PhD training spanning various areas of biomedical research. Her role encompassed student recruitment and retention tasks, ensuring all students receive training and support throughout their tenure. Last, excuse me, but most definitely not least, I'm joined by Dr. Brunson, who is a member of the Leadership Alliance Executive Board and one of the most knowledgeable people I know about graduate education and one of the greatest champions of graduate diversification out there. He will have tremendous advice for you, as will all of the other panelists. So with that, I think should we get the PowerPoint started?
Okay, so I will begin. So good afternoon, everyone. So when you're talking about the graduate applications, there's this objective part and there's the subjective part. Of course, the objective part are your grades and your biographical information, as well as any test scores that they might be required. And then there's a subjective part, like letters of recommendation, and a big part of it is the graduate essays. And so for these kinds of essays or graduate statements, let's first talk about what institutions might be looking for. What they could ask you could be specific or it could be general. And among them are a number of essays. For example, the statement of purpose, which we're going to talk about today, is one of them. And this is a chance for you to tell a graduate school why they should admit you in your own words. Another example of the essays are a personal statement, which could be the same as a statement of purpose, but only if they ask for one essay. But if they ask for multiple essays, then this personal statement is another different one. There are research statements, which give you a chance to speak about your research and have you connect your research to your studies or the graduate program. There are also essays that are called, or statements called diversity statements, where you're going to speak about your personal experiences. And there are also some examples of some optional essays. And we'll talk a little bit about those in case you're asked to do them. And finally, if you are in a humanities or social science, then the essay that you might be required, or you are typically required to do, is called submitting a writing sample. And that is where you literally give an example of some writing that you've done. So again, briefly, these essays are the ones that you could be doing: statement of purpose, personal statement, research statement, diversity statement, optional essays, and the writing sample. Next slide, please. So to give an overview, again, these essays could be the topics could be very open-ended. Some schools will give you the opportunity to do an optional essay. If you have that chance, we strongly recommend that you do this because it's your chance to discuss additionally some of your positive attributes and make additional points for your case on why you should be admitted to that program. Any essays that you write, you should have them reviewed by a professor or a mentor that you have, and even possibly someone from your career center if you are still at a college or university. And always, always, always double check anything that you have written. Next slide, please. So the statement of purpose, which is why we're here today. So this is an essay that is the major part of that application. So you want to demonstrate to the admissions committee that you can answer this question, that you can write this essay, and it's going to be clear, concise, and you're going to come off very personable. You're going to be communicating with folks to let them know that you understand what this program is about, what faculty members you're interested in working with, as well as why you are qualified for it. And in being qualified for it, again, you're going to talk about your research, anything that you might consider that's going to work in your favor toward your diversity. And in structuring this statement of purpose, there are things that you should include. Again, why you're interested in the program. Why have you selected that particular program? Why that program at that institution? What makes you a good candidate for that program? You're going to talk about your fit and your match. And again, what experiences that you have had that are going to shape your career goals. Next slide, please. So this statement of purpose is typically going to be between 750 and 1,000 words. Basically, that's around 1.5 pages to 2 pages. Again, you're going to tell why you want to attend that program at that institution, and you want to let it be known that you intend to attend that program. You intend to get this degree, and you want to let them know why, again, that institution. So moving from that statement of purpose, let's talk about another essay. Next slide, please. The personal statement. Unlike the statement of purpose, the personal statement is going to be much more personal. And a good way to think of it is using the acronym WHO, as in who are you? The W, you're going to use it as a welcome. You're going to describe unique details that give the committee insights into your life and your qualities. H, history. Describe how you learned and became interested in the field and any accomplishments that you've made while you've been pursuing your interests in this field. And an outline. You're going to let them know how you reached this point And what experiences have led you to your goals and your interest in graduate school? Again, it's going to be much more personal than a statement of purpose, because in that statement of purpose, you're going to let them know why you are extremely qualified and why they should select you. But the personal statement allows them to know more about you. The next essay, next slide, that we want to talk about is the research statements. Now, the research statement is part of the statement of purpose, but as a separate essay, institutions have begun requiring this. This started maybe right before the pandemic, and I'll be honest with you, it started as an example. It started as a way to understand more about you because rightly so, students get a lot of coaching. You want to make sure this is right. However, sometimes the coaches are not familiar with your research. So institutions require this so that they can understand, or they can know that you understand what they want to know, and to tell them about your research. So let them know what you've done. You want to connect your research studies and your program to your future plans. And those future plans could be your immediate plans as a graduate student, or your plans to do postdoctoral research, or your career plans. In order to write this, you're going to have to do what we call a memory dump. Take everything that you think is relevant and get it out of your head and onto the screen. After you've done this, you can screen through, or you can sift through all that you have typed and select what you think is relevant. Next slide, please. And then comes the more interesting one, the diversity statement. So here's where you're going to talk about your personal experiences that have made you who you are, and how these have contributed to your education and to your journey toward graduate education. So universities are attempting to form a very inclusive body. And in this inclusive body, they want to know demographics, where are you from, if you are okay with your racial or your ethnic identity. You want anything that's about you that's going to help them. Your experiences you bring to any graduate program that you're going to be in, the sum of your life experiences, which includes those things that are a part of yet separate from your research. And adversity, that's a big one. One of the things that they want to know is that you are able to overcome adversity. This journey through research is going to be one where you're going to be required to do a lot. Working on a PhD, you are a knowledge creator. You are going to add new knowledge to the world. And that is something that doesn't necessarily go very easily. There are going to be times, especially if you're in some kind of experimental science or some experimental field, in which upwards of 80 to 90% of what you do is just not going to work. Or if you're in a humanities or social science, where all your leads and your research are going to lead to nothing. What do you do at that point? By letting them know examples of adversity that you've overcome in the past, it gives them confidence to know that when things get tough, as they will in the graduate program, that you'll continue to stick to it, that you'll help you, as you are both a mentee in the program as well as a trainee. Continuing, next slide. Continuing with this diversity, you're going to provide evidence of that you are able to handle, number one, different perspectives. You're going to be in a graduate program where folks are not going to be like you necessarily. Your cultural backgrounds. Tell us more about it. Help us understand you and why what you bring is going to be an addition, a positive addition to that program, to that department, to that institution. Your socioeconomic status. Again, this is something that we want to know about. Often that socioeconomic status can be directly related to your ability to overcome adversity. Communicating your identity, whether it's your racial, your ethnic, your gender identity, your gender expression. All of this is really important because these are the summation of who you are, and who you are is a strong influence on your ability to succeed in these programs. What can you bring as a result of all these experiences, and what will your contributions be? All this, it's really, really, really important. So now that we've talked about the essays, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Jasmine to talk about some pointers while I go on mute.
Good afternoon, everyone, and we're so excited to have you. I do want to share with you some pointers to really help you to map out your personal statement or statement of purpose or diversity statements. One thing that is of the utmost importance is to have a conversational in your tone and in your delivery for your materials. Some things to really be mindful about is skipping over a flashy introduction. In all things, your application is likely going to go before a panel or a admissions committee, and everyone interprets things differently. So while in your mind, it may appear that, oh, this is amazing, this is great. A lot of times the panels will have several applications to review, and they're going to be concerned about the content. They're going to be concerned about alignment and fit into the respective program. And so I do want to transition to the next bullet point about not using humor. Something that might be humorous to you may not go over well with the committee. And so we definitely encourage that you focus your efforts in demonstrating the best version of yourself and highlighting your credentials and your contributions to the respective graduate program. I love this next point about, highlighting your achievements and telling specifically why you should be submitted, why you should be selected, not only into the institution, but what strengths and value will you add to the respective department as well? So be sure that you take out time to reflect, to think, and to demonstrate why you are the best candidate for this particular graduate program. Last but definitely not least, if you have any gaps within your performance or experiences, be sure to highlight that in a meaningful way. Life happens to us all, and we can't control what happens to us. However, we are able to respond accordingly. And so this will be a great opportunity to share and to highlight not only what happened, but more importantly, what did you learn from the experience? How are you going to move forward? And admissions committee members love to hear about your resiliency and your perseverance moving forward in handling our challenges. Next slide. And I am going to transition this over to my colleague, Will.
So if you are a humanist or a social scientist, you may be asked to submit a writing sample. And the challenge here is that these can really vary widely in terms of constraints. And you may only have a few different projects, a few different samples that you would consider good candidates for sharing as part of your admissions dossier. So one piece that I want to convey, because often you may be concerned, well, I majored, for example, in American studies, but now I want to apply to a political science program. And there are different norms and conventions in those different disciplines. And if I'm sending, a paper that's recognizable to somebody in American studies to a political science program, are they going to treat it with the same level of analysis they would for somebody who majored in political science? How do you adjust for that? The key piece in submitting a writing sample is framing what the project was meant to accomplish for the committee. So putting it within the context of your education and accomplishments. They're going to read it not to see, okay, are you already writing like one of our graduate students? They know you're not writing like one of their graduate students because you're not one of their graduate students yet. So take that as a given, that they're not looking for you to already demonstrate that you know how to write in their discipline. If you already knew how to do that, you wouldn't need to go to their program. What they're trying to understand is how in writing do you tackle an explanation, for example, of a particular thesis. How do you lay that information out? What is the clarity of your prose? And that will come through on the merits of the writing itself. But the key bridging piece is shaping the context. Because somebody, for example, in political science will understand what a political science seminar paper might need to look like. But if they're in a different discipline, they may not understand what, for example, the prompt was, or the way that papers are typically structured. So taking some time to include that with whatever sample you submit is ideal. The other piece of advice I want to give is make sure you have a number of different people read your writing sample, and then just ask them what parts were confusing. What can I clarify? Make sure these people are they are well-read folks. They can be your faculty, they can be your peers, they can be your family. Just find out where those points of confusion are, so that you can then go through and simplify and clarify all of that. Beyond that, it really is just a reflection of the writing that you're the proudest of. So if there's something that's closer to the discipline, but you're not very proud of it, you don't think it's a great example of it, but there's something from an adjacent discipline that you really are proud of, submit that adjacent piece, because that most accurately reflects the way you think and who you are and the kind of researcher that you're going to be. And that's what they want to see. And ideally, you're trying to pursue the perfect fit for you in the program. You're not just auditioning, right? You are trying to get admitted to the place that is the best fit for you. And that's going to translate to the best experience that you can have. You won't have a good experience if you matriculate into a program that isn't a good fit for you, even if it is the #1 program in your field. If it's not a good fit, you won't be able to thrive there, because it just isn't suited to you. In that sense, maybe one that isn't as highly ranked, but is really just the perfect match for you, is where you want to go. And so that's why submitting the writing that you're proudest of, that you think most accurately reflects the way you think, the kinds of problems that you're interested in, is what you want to do to showcase yourself as a potential future colleague for the admissions committee. Now I'm going to hand it over to, I'm not sure, but I know it's not me, so I'm going to shut up.
Okay, let me discuss this topic, but I do want to echo what Dr. Wittels said about writing samples. I think this is also true for all the personal statements and various essays that you write. You want to present your authentic self. I think that's the really important point when you submit these essays, because you want to show your committee who you are. And as Dr. Wittels said, if the committee finds that you're not a good fit because you present as best as you could who you are, and if they don't think you're a good fit, I mean, that's fine. Like, you're not going to have a good experience if you were admitted to that program, if you choose to go to that program. So, it definitely goes both ways. So you want to make sure that you present yourself as who you are. Now, so essays definitely, have these important elements that you want to convey who you are in writing. Now, CV and resumes, they're a little bit different in that most of the information, will be somewhat, cut and dry, but you can write CVs and resumes in a way that is informative. And I think, importantly, you want to make sure that the content is consistent with what you write in your essays. So CVs and resumes actually help reviewers or readers understand your essay, because what you have in your CVs and resumes are sort of mostly facts, right? So CVs represent your complete academic and professional history. So there is a difference between CVs and resumes. So CVs can be longer than resumes because you want to include sort of history of your experience. and education and training in academia. And so the sections will include education, employment, research experiences, conference presentations, publications, and perhaps awards and honors that you received. So these, and I would say, try to focus on areas that are relevant to your academic and professional history, especially, for example, in the employment section, if you were hired as a technician, that should be listed, but not necessarily in other types of positions if it's not related to your academic history. And research experience is really important. So I definitely encourage everybody to just write just a brief description, like you will say, who you worked for, at what institution, but it's like a one sentence of type of project that you worked on, because that's really helpful. So that, the reviewers don't have to go back and forth between your research statement and your CVs, because then you have, the reviewers will have everything in place in front of them. And also, I encourage you to list education and all these experiences in chronological order, starting with the most recent position or publication. It's always good to start with the most recent and go back in time. And like I said, like education, employment, research experience sections definitely should come first. That's what for graduate school applications, that's what everybody looks for, is how much research experience have you gained, and again, make sure that they correspond to what you write in your research statement if a separate statement is required, or in a personal statement if that has to include your research experience, then make sure they're in there as well. But it's a really good way to be able to sort of capture all you have done in your academic and professional journey. Now, resumes are much shorter, typically 1 to 2 pages, and these are usually tailored to a specific job or position that you're applying for employment, for example. And so they highlight pretty much the experience relevant to this particular position. So you don't include a lot of other information that's not needed or relevant to the job that you're looking for. And so some graduate program applications will request for either CV and resume. So, and if there are page limits, make sure you follow the page limit. I'd suggest CV is probably a better form, just because you can add more than the resume format, because resume format is, like I said, it's very specifically tailored to a job. And I can answer additional questions later on, but let me turn to the last slide.
This is now the Q&A, yeah? Or is there? Great. So a question came in the chat that was also sort of the top question in that was submitted before. And by the way, you submitted really wonderful questions. So we can tell that you're already thinking along the right lines. So what are some common red flags you see in personal statements / are there recurring topics that you suggest students avoid? Dr. Crenshaw, I'm going to have you start this one off.
Yes. One thing that is definitely a red flag is when there is a lack of focus in and around the personal statement. When I say lack of focus, sometimes students go off course, like they're telling their whole story and not highlighting attributes about themselves as it relates to the graduate program. So their achievements, their prior research experiences, why they should be selected in the program, what do they hope to achieve and get out? And a lot of times the personal statement will lack depth. It lacks clarity. And so a tip and a strategy that I definitely share with students all the time is before you write your documents, create an outline. I call it a skeleton that highlights key talking points that you want to relay to the admissions committee. The organization is literally going to help strengthen and empower your personal statement to ensure that you're on topic, and more importantly, to demonstrate why you are qualified for selection.
And I want to add something to that. Think about, so again, and it's going to relate to another question about the difference between a personal statement. Think about this. The statement of purpose is not about you. It's about the reader. You are writing this essay so that the reader can understand and contextualize what it is that you want to do, why do you want to do it, why you think you can do it, and what you want to do afterwards. Those are the main points. And when you're going to write them, if you can take those things that I mentioned and dump those things out of your mind, you should end up with somewhere between, for each, when you combine the answers to the 4 questions, maybe between 12 and 15 pages. And you're just going to keep editing that and editing it with transitions. Now, some of the things you might have answered for one question, it's okay. Get it out of your head and onto the screen. And you're going to edit that till it's around two and a half pages long. Again, you're going to take out all the duplications. You're going to think about what's really, really relevant. And so that's one of the things you want to do. And you can stay on topic by making sure that you're thinking, am I telling this committee why I would be the best fit and match for this position in this graduate program, in this department, at this institution?
Yeah, I just want to add that, graduate programs are investing in you. It costs resources and a lot of time and effort. And so we want to make sure that we choose the applicants. We want to be absolutely sure that they're committed to the PhD training and they love science, they're passionate about it. And those are the kind of people that graduate schools look for. And so we want to make sure that, we pick the right people. And so that's why, it's true that, they have to read a lot of applications and you need to distinguish yourself. You need to sort of leave an impression because this is in order to get your foot in the door, right? So then, because that's the only way you're going to be able to get a chance to interview with the program. So the only thing that the committee has are the written portion of the application. So it is something that you really want to represent, like I said many times, who you are, what you want to do, like what you're going to bring to the institution if you're accepted to the program. I mean that, and convince them that you're worthy of their consideration.
She said, and that is, you can really help the committee by not making them play Where's Waldo. They shouldn't have to look all over your statement to figure out what you want to do. Think of it as something that's really, really important to us in the Leadership Alliance, and that's storytelling. You're telling the story of why you should be selected, not why you want it. They know you want it. That's why they made the position. So tell why you should be selected.
You can think of your statements as a trailer for the movie of you're going to that graduate school. This is the movie that they're going to get to see. Now, of course, you have to cut it down, right? A trailer can only show a little bit. There's a reason they call it a teaser. But you are highlighting those elements and you are going to try and highlight them in a coherent way. And one framework for thinking about that is the 3 Ps, and they should connect together in a triangle: person, program, and then the third one is potential projects. So I see in a lot of the questions, how much is too much? Should I talk more about experiences? Am I oversharing, undersharing? The question you need to be asking about all the pieces of information that you may want to potentially put into that trailer is, does it connect any of those 2 corners of the triangles? So if you're sharing something about your life, does it show them how the person, how you say, connect to your research interests, potential projects? Or does it show how the person, you, is a good fit for the program? Or in the reverse, does it show how the program is a good fit for you? That aspect of your personal life. And you want to do that with all of these elements. So your research accomplishments, your work experience, but also the knowledge you have that you've developed of the program itself, right? Of the labs that the students are placed in, or of the strengths of this particular program in, say, English literature. Why these things fit together: the person, the program, and the potential projects. So you can share it if it fits along one of those legs, if it's connecting those two points of the triangle. If it doesn't help to connect, leave it out. Next question, because this has come up a couple of times. So the opening, right? You've got a very short, right? The folks who are reading this, they don't have a ton of attention span, and you can lose them with the opening. We've mentioned, you don't want to do a flashy opening. What are some examples of what a problematic opening looks like? Dr. Brunson, can you kick this one off?
So number one, don't lecture the faculty. I like to pick on this example from psychology that I've seen over and over. They start off the essay. Psychology is the study of the human mind. Well, do you think that a faculty member or professors with PhDs in psychology have any idea what it is? Yes, they do. You've gone to lecture them, which is one of the things. Don't lecture them. Number two, you've wasted some of those 750 to 1,000 words. And number three, it was completely unnecessary. It can start off like that. Or, and typically in the biomedical sciences, well, when I was 6 years old, my favorite, no. First of all, and my dear friend, Dr. Naoko, who is but also a biological scientist, will tell you how many times they see this in the essay. Keep it focused. And yeah, so that flashy opening would be lecturing them, telling them about your childhood. No. Productivity. This essay should be why you should be selected and why you will be productive in that program or that department at that institution. So yeah.
I totally echo Dr. Brunson. I do want to chime in and just definitely share about balance and moderation. So with the start of your personal statement, you definitely want to grab the reader's attention and to stand out. But you don't want to go overboard. Like, you don't want to tell your whole story, especially if it doesn't connect with the intent and purpose of why you should be selected and why you're qualified. And so be distinctive, but also be impactful. I just wanted to share that with everyone.
And can I loop around to the opposite? We talked about what not to do. Again, without a flashy opening, just tell them. Dr. Wittels talked about, the trailer. Well, your first paragraph is like the trailer into the rest of it. I intend to earn a PhD in chemistry to begin my career as a professor at a Research One institution. Oh, nothing flashy. You told them. Then you use strong language. I intend to. What do you want to? I intend earn a PhD in this discipline for what? What do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? What do you want to go afterwards? So yeah, don't make the faculty have to search. They know right from the start when you said that. It's, you don't worry. Also, don't go overthinking about, am I not being modest? No, this is not the time for modesty. As Dr. Naoko said, they're going to be putting a lot of people and resources into your training and education, and they need to know what they're going to get. So culturally, sometimes it's about us and not about me. This is one of those times where we encourage you to, for this short period, to leave your that part of you behind, And don't think about I don't want to appear too arrogant or blah, blah, blah. You want to let them know that this is something that you want and you seriously want to pursue it.
So 2 questions came in before we got started that I think are similar, but capture the conundrum that many of you are facing in different ways. So I'm going to read them both, and then I'm going to ask Dr. Tanese to start us off. So the first is, how do you approach a personal statement at the same time as you are researching potential labs and trying to figure out specifically which topics are the most interesting to you? And then the other question, and I love the way that this was phrased, how can one express interests in something without yourself even knowing your future goals? Dr. Tanese, please start us off.
Right. Yeah, that can be tricky. Okay, so you definitely want to discuss areas of research that you're familiar with, you've received training in, you have a lot of experiences, but there are a number of students who develop additional interests or new directions that they want to pursue, and I think that's okay. And there are graduate programs that are umbrella programs, so that allows students to pursue somewhat different areas than what they've experienced as an undergraduate. But you do need to make sure that you give the information about your training and how much experience you've gained from during your undergraduate years, but then talk more about why you're interested in going in a different field, and also in doing so you certainly want to bring up like names of faculty or centers or programs that the institution has to offer that really excite you. Right. So I know some students feel a bit uncomfortable, like trying to convey that they have somewhat different interests from what they've experienced, but that's to be expected, because as an undergrad you have limited opportunities, and so you learn what you need to learn with the opportunities given, but sky's the limit in graduate school. And again, if you're applying to an umbrella program, you definitely have a chance to explore new ways. So, and that's what I would do is start out with your where you're grounded, but then discuss why you want to move in a new direction. So I don't know if that answered both questions. I wasn't really sure about the first one. Will, is it?
No, I thought that was I learned something.
Okay, thank you.
So the when I was talking about the 3 Ps, I didn't say potential project. I said potential projects. It's okay to be interested in multiple topics. What you're really trying to demonstrate when you are talking about the questions you're passionate about is that passion. Research is a long process. So there has to be some fire in your belly, fire to develop that knowledge and share it with others. So showing that you get passionate about questions doesn't have to be about a particular question. They're not necessarily looking for somebody who does something specifically, but rather they're looking for people who are passionate about the process, and the center of gravity for those passions coincide with the strengths of that program. So you don't necessarily have to say that this is the project I'm going to pursue as my dissertation. I don't know anyone who actually did their thesis on the topic they pitched or topics they pitched potentially as a program. I know I didn't. It wasn't even the same language or country that I ended up working on. So they know that you'll be making choices. And in fact, if you find that you're really passionate about a couple of different projects, you can acknowledge, you say, I'm passionate about all of these things. I know I'll have to select one, and it may even be something that I don't have here. But the reason I want to go to this program is because you're so strong in this area that I'm really interested in, large cell cancer or particular kinds of, poetry after the Cuban Revolution in Cuba, right? I mean, there's different areas. And that's really what you're trying to demonstrate, in addition to showing that you are passionate about questions. You're going to be able to stay this course. So that's maybe the way to do it. It's not that you're locking yourself into a topic and that they're going to say, oh, well, they mentioned this topic, but not that topic, so we're not going to admit them. It's really about that passion and why the area that you're passionate about fits with their strengths. So maybe for the last 10 minutes, let's switch to the CV personal statement side of things. So a great question came in during our webinar here. Is it worth including experiences in a CV, resume, cover letter that were high quality, but were cut short by outside circumstances, for example, the pandemic? And Dr. Crenshaw, can you start us off, please?
Sure thing. At the end of the day, you cannot control, unforeseen circumstances. But I definitely would recommend that you list it with your CV and on your resume. I would highlight and stress or indicate like the skills that you acquired during that duration of time. And please know, once you list, that experience and the date and time, the reviewers are going to have some context. I know on your resume, you are limited in capacity with how much detail that you can provide, but during your interview, that is an opportunity where you can elaborate more. So those are some thoughts, but I definitely would reflect your current experiences, but also demonstrate a willingness to expand and to learn more.
On your resume and your CV this is the perfect time, because you're also going to give that a copy of that resume or that CV. It'll usually be a CV that to your recommenders. So in this case, those things that you don't actually have the space to elaborate on, this is the perfect time for your recommenders to come and chime in, because they have fewer limitations. So if there's something that you've done, and particularly if it's something that you've done with someone who's writing you a letter of recommendation, this is the chance you're going to be like Beyonce, and they're going to be like your backup dancers. So they're going to be the ones to talk about that experience. And because these are faculty to faculty conversations, these letters of recommendations. So if there's something that is on your CV that you really like, that you really want highlighted more, this is the perfect time to do it, is to say to your recommenders, oh, and remember that time where we worked on X, Y, and Z together. So now it's on your CV, and now it's getting additional emphasis because you mentioned it, but more importantly, it's a faculty member mentioning it and elaborating it and giving additional feedback from a faculty peer perspective.
In the CV, should we only highlight research experience, or does work experience not related to research also matter? Dr. Brunson, could you start us off, please?
I would say work experience is not related if that work experience has given you some skill or ability that would be helpful. Remember, Dr. Wittels said, connecting those dots. If it could be if that work experience has given you some knowledge or some skill that can be related to your potential success in that program or on that project that you're talking about. So yeah, you can, but you want to be very careful. If again, it's a CV, you're going to be listing everything. But if it's a resume and you're talking about the relevant things, keep that in mind. But yes, you should list things. And again, you can even refer to it, particularly if it's a personal statement versus a statement of purpose. You can refer to it as part of your journey, etc. So yeah, you can put that on the CV if it is, or you can put it on the resume. You can mention something if it relates to, as Dr. Wittels talked about, one of those P's, particularly project and program, or potential project program.
Yeah, I'd suggest maybe just adding like one line if that experience, had some relevance, or you learned something that was useful to you, just so that the readers don't have to guess. Like, why is this here? Like, a lot of times, like I'm second guessing. It's like, what? That's why I think it's good to just to have one sentence of your experience, not just the title of your experience, because I oftentimes like, how is this relevant? And so you would just want to tell them like why it was relevant, right? So CV gives us space for you to do that. I mean, I would not write a paragraph, because that's not a good approach. But I think it's helpful to explain why you that work experience was useful to you.
Dr. Tanese, that was going to be the question that I was going to ask. How detailed should a particular entry be on these documents? So you've already answered it. So I'm just going to pose an open-ended question, and I'm going to have you start it off, and maybe our fellow panelists can. Any last thought, any last piece of advice that we haven't covered?
Well, I guess as you've heard, we talked a lot about writing personal statement, research statement that really highlights like who you are, your experience, your training, why you want to go to graduate school, why you want to go to this particular graduate school, right? So this is going to require a fair amount of your time to research that program, the institution, the university, and so this is going to limit like how many schools you want to apply to, because one of the things that I think puts some applicants at a disadvantage is if like essay sounds fairly generic, and you're kind of like bored of like reading it, because it doesn't really emphasize like why you're applying to our program. And as I said, from our standpoint, we're investing in these in the applicants who eventually enroll in the program. So we want to make sure you take enough time to get to know the program, and all you can do is really go to the website and learn as much as you can. But some programs actually have like works webinars or some sort of like opportunities to even speak to administration or students, right? So take advantage of those opportunities, get to know the program, and decide like, do you really want to go to the program? Because that's you have that sense, that tone has to come through in your essay, because otherwise you read it and says, well, maybe the student's just kind of shopping around, and you get a very general statement about why you want to go to graduate school, and that's good. But if you're comparing and reading all the applications, if some really come across as very passionate about our program, then we want to consider inviting them for interview. You want to say like, wow, I want to meet this person. Like, this person's so interested in our program. I want to meet this person and speak to them. So that would be my advice.
Say, in the sense that it's really, really important, the work that you do ahead of time. So please, if you're, I've narrowed this down to 10 is way too many. If you should be somewhere, I would say 3 to 6, 3 to 7. And as Dr. Naoko said, what you want to do is once you've identified them through your research, you want to go in depth, but concisely about why those programs. When you drop the name, when you start talking about the faculty research, don't just say the research members I'm interested in Dr. Jasmine, Dr. Don, Dr. Naoko. No, you want to say something like Dr. Naoko's research into how to get organic solutions to work, how to get aqueous proteins to work in organic solutions, something like that. You want to let them know that you've done that level of investigation. Again, they want to know that you understand who they are, what they do, and what the department does. And if it's too broad or it's too general, like you can take this statement of purpose and you can stick this in. No. That's not going to help. But keep in mind, once you get it, there is going to be a single paragraph that's going to be specific to that program, because you got to remember, your research is not going to change from essay to essay, but what it is that you want to do, why that program, which faculty members, and why. So that is the level of specificity, but make sure that it's clear that you've done the work in the background and you can identify why that program, why those professors, why that institution.
And one last piece of advice that I would share in doing your research and your preparations to help narrow down, your list of institutions that you're going to pursue. I encourage you to host informational interviews before you submit in your application. It is quite okay, and it is a common practice for faculty members to have, a video call or even a phone call, whatever the case may be, where you can learn more about their research, their active projects. This is a great opportunity for you to get a feel and assess without commitments at that, to see if there's alignment and fit here. I'll even take it a step further. In addition to, once you have identified some faculty of interest, reach out to their graduate students. The grad students, oh my goodness, they will tell the good, the bad, and everything in between. Because you can learn more about that faculty. You can learn more about the research and just have context. Once you do this, you might start out with a list of 10, but please believe you're going to dwindle down. And you'll have focus and clarity as to who you would like to pursue research activities in and with. So I definitely wanted to encourage you. Please reach out, host, and have informational interviews.
On that point, I think it's easy to be nervous that you might sound like you don't know anything when you're talking with these future faculty. Well, that's why you keep the conversation on the future, right? What are you most excited about in terms of your research agenda for the next 5 years? Because that's when you're going to be at the school. What are you most excited about in terms of what's happening with the program? Are there going to be searches happening soon? Nobody knows that. You can't know what is about to happen in the program from the outside. So that's why you're always, if you keep the conversation there, there's nothing that they can expect you to already know. Do make sure you've read a paper or two of them, but beyond that, keep it on that near-term future. We're out of time, so I'm going to kick it back to Dr. Indorf. Dr. Indorf, take it away.
Well, thank you so much for all of that wonderful advice. After all of these sessions, I always think to myself, if only I had known. I am never going to forget that 3 Ps, the P triangle. So thank you for all of that. So it's hard to believe, but next week is our last week of this summer's virtual professional development series, and it's a very important topic: finances, how to finance your graduate education, how to manage your finances in graduate school. So please join us on Monday at 4 p.m. for part 1 and Wednesday for part 2 of finances in graduate school. Thank you. Have a great evening.